Hello, Mr. McIntyre. I'm Vlad, and welcome to the Crypto Insider interview. Today, we will be talking about Ethereum Classic and your involvement with the project and maybe the roadmap of it. So, would you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, Vlad. Thank you very much for having me. Like you said, I'm Donald McIntyre. I'm business developer at ETC Dev. I used to work in the financial industry before at UBS and Morgan Stanley. And then in the first .com boom, I decided to go independent to become an entrepreneur. So I started a company called DineroNet in 2000. Then in 2000, between 2002, 2003, the .com boom, everything crashed. So I had to close that company. Then I had a wealth management firm, my own practice called McIntyre SA until 2012. And since 2012, I read about Bitcoin for the first time, and I started to follow Bitcoin and the whole crypto space from knowing zero about all those things and learning in the process. And then in 2014, I was very enthusiastic about Ethereum because I think that Bitcoin, the limitation of Bitcoin at the time, at least for my vision for a platform like that, was that it wasn't Turing complete. It didn't support smart contracts. And I was thinking of a wealth management service, always within my industry, a wealth management service on Bitcoin, but it couldn't happen because it didn't have those capabilities. So Ethereum was a great solution. So I started to, since then I've been following Ethereum since 2014. And then in 2016, when Ethereum decided to split and create a new blockchain, when I stuck to that new blockchain called Ethereum for a while, even though I supported Ethereum Classic as well at the time. But I had the hope that I could convince everybody in the Ethereum community to stick to the principles of immutability and not reversing the chain, and high security for the chain as a main focus instead of high performance and stuff like that. Until 2018, when I realized that the Ethereum community was not going to follow that path, and they're still going to move to proof of stake and sharding and other technologies, and they seem to be very focused on the experimenting, which is very insecure. So I finally decided when Coinbase announced that ETC was going to be listed, I said, okay, what was happening with Ethereum, my frustration there, together with that good news from ETC, made me move full-time to ETC. So I went to the website of ETC Dev, and I saw that they were looking for a business developer and marketing person. So I applied, and here I am.
So, did you have any formal position in the Ethereum community? I mean, ETH, not ETC.
No. When just before Ethereum in 2015 was going to launch, which is Ethereum Classic really, because we are the mainnet, I created a project called Etherplan, which was wealth management, my vision of applying wealth management on Ethereum, on the blockchain. And my participation was just as another entrepreneur in the ecosystem, as a like community member. I never had a position in the foundation or any of the official entities in Ethereum.
But even though Ethereum Classic is the original chain, it has made some changes to the vision which maybe the founders have had, because right now you have a fixed supply, you have removed the difficulty bomb in mining. Mm-hmm. And also it seems like the more time progresses, the more it starts to look like Bitcoin.
Yeah, bueno, that is the fact that it looks like Bitcoin in terms of philosophy. was always the original founding idea, no, of immutability and permissionlessness and decentralization, censorship resistance, etc., and to create this neutral system around the world that works the same way around the world. Technically, it is very different than Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is, you could say it's a ledger with accounts and balances, and that's a function of that network. In the case of Ethereum Classic, it's the same, but on top you have Turing completeness, or the ability to store programs that become decentralized programs and they can execute in the decentralized blockchain. So that in terms of technical vision, they're still different things. In terms of security philosophy, yes, they're the same.
I've noticed that in late 2017 and early 2018, it was all about becoming the next Ethereum. We saw projects like Tron, like Tezos, and I think I can name a bunch of others, which have basically raised a lot of money, and they just promise to deliver what Ethereum doesn't. And in these comparisons, which people usually make between platforms which enable dApps, they seem to overlook Ethereum Classic. They seem to just not care about it and say, oh, it's just a small project, it doesn't scale, it's not meant to take us into Web 4.0 or 3.0, whatever they call it. And why do you think there is this attitude towards Ethereum Classic?
All the other projects that imitate Ethereum, the Ethereum design, it's because the Ethereum design is very sound as a design that combines the layer of the cryptocurrency and the layer of the decentralized computing, which are the smart contracts and decentralized programs. So that design evidently must be correct, because everybody is replicating that, and they all promise in general things that are not physically possible normally, which is immediate high scalability, and excellent governance, and things like that, digamos, millions of transactions per second. All those promises are marketing promises, but it's very difficult to actually implement in a real blockchain, because it has physical limitations. That's why that the only way to solve those limitations is to building layers on top rather than modifying the base layer. So that's about Ethereum, why it is the correct model. In terms of Ethereum Classic as the mainnet, why there is a perception that less people pay attention to it. I think my personal theory is that when Ethereum, what is called today Ethereum, which is the real split, the real fork, separated from the mainnet, they moved not only with 90%, I would say, of the dApp developers and the core developers and the whole community, the whole ecosystem, 90% went into following Vitalik and the rest of the leaders of that network, and they moved there. So that's one reason why the other one remained smaller in terms of amount of people. And the other thing is because the Ethereum Foundation, which went with the fork, and the other advocates, personally, they all have all the money. So when you have a lot of money and you have a lot of people supporting your project, then you have the ability to make much more noise than the rest. So that's the difference between Ethereum and Ethereum Classic in terms of market positioning. I think Ethereum definitely has 20 or 30 times more capacity today to make more noise.
But how should I phrase it? Let's say that I'm a developer and I want to deploy a decentralized application. And why would I choose Ethereum Classic right now?
Well, the main difference between Ethereum and Ethereum Classic is that Ethereum, first, the community doesn't have a an ethos of immutability, no, just to call it something simplified. And Ethereum Classic has a firm belief and principle of immutability. That is reflected not only in the actions of the community, as it's obvious, because Ethereum Classic stays in the mainnet and is going to stay with not reversing the blockchain, and which is something that it has already happened in Ethereum, but also reflecting the technology itself. Ethereum is actually moving to proof of stake, has changed the monetary policy several times, and is moving to sharding. In the case of Ethereum Classic, it is staying with proof of work because it's the proven secure consensus mechanism. It has a fixed monetary policy, and it's going to stick also to a governance system of open source, with no organizations or no centralized parties voting or anything like that, or deciding things, but it's going to stick to just proposing technology, which is always secure, and adoption is the way that that is going forward or not, but not really other mechanisms, other centralized mechanisms of governance.
Can you actually run a node for Ethereum Classic right now? Because I remember seeing a post by Jameson Lopp, who basically constructed a machine with all the latest components, like very high-end machine, which was attempting to run a full node of the Ethereum blockchain, and it was not able. It had like 4 terabytes of storage. It had all the processing power necessary, but it was still getting errors, and it was still difficult for it to synchronize with the blockchain. And is it possible with Ethereum Classic to just run a node?
With Ethereum Classic, it's easier to run a node, but because the blockchain is smaller, because it experienced less activity. For example, it doesn't have all the CryptoKitties activity of 2017, but not necessarily because it is technically different. So I would say that Ethereum Classic, when it comes to time of high use, is going to experience. It would experience the similar issues as Ethereum. In terms of running a node today, I think like I told you before, I'm a business development and a marketing person, not a technical person, but I think it's much easier to install and run a node of Ethereum Classic. But also that experience that blog post that Jameson Lopp published was used by Ethereum Classic to actually solve some of those problems. For example, ETC Dev, my company, first built a Sputnik VM, which replaces the Ethereum EVM, which is the virtual machine. It's much more efficient and easier to use. So that was one solution to Lopp's blog post. The other one is that building stuff on top on Ethereum is also very, very difficult. So the solution to that, or the proposal of ETC Dev for that, is something called Emerald, which is a platform of many tools for new developers who already know how to create web applications and mobile applications to come to Ethereum Classic and easily build a dApp and learn how to build a dApp with the best practices. No, it's a set of tools that is going to keep advancing, and at some point it's going to be so easy that people are going to. It's going to be similar to WordPress. It's going to be very easy to create an application in the future. So we are solving what Jameson wrote about.